Gangs of Muslim men were systematically exploiting, grooming, raping young girls. There's been very, very strong pushback from people saying, no, you can't talk about this. This is demonizing members of the Islamic and Pakistani community. This is what Elon Musk picked up, the government minister in charge of this sort of thing. Oh no, we must have a local inquiry, not a national inquiry. It's been pointed out that the Labour Party never found an inquiry it didn't love, but suddenly they've changed their tune. They don't want an inquiry. Does the age of consent exist? Does the age of consent exist in Sharia law? And as far as I can tell, no, it doesn't seem to. And in one case, father was actually arrested for protesting about his daughter's rape. And what we've had in Britain is 30 years of deflection, which is a disgrace. Absolute disgrace.
By the way, my name is Joe McClane. I host a radio program called A Catholic Take, where we look at the world through a Catholic lens. I'd love for you to hang out with us. If you like it, give it a thumbs up and let us know what you think in the comments below. Over the last couple of days, there's been a lot of outrage in the news of what's going on in the UK. Elon Musk has been stirring up lots of trouble over this. There's a headline over at the Telegraph. Elon Musk has ripped the cloak of deceit off of one of Britain's most disgusting scandals. But Nigel Farage gave a great statement, I think, in Parliament yesterday. Have a listen.
To what extent were gangs of Pakistani men raping young white girls? Because ultimately, it seems to me there's a deep racist element behind what happened. Now, I might be right, I might be wrong, but doesn't the country deserve a full, open national inquiry? And I'll say this, if the government won't do this, and I do believe there is now overwhelming support on all sides of the political spectrum for this, and Parliament should not be in denial about this. If it doesn't, then we will raise the money at Reform UK and appoint independent arbiters, because we need the truth to be out there.
Well, the effort in Parliament yesterday was in fact turned down. It was voted against 364 to 111. And that seems, as an outsider, that seems absolutely crazy to me. So I've asked Reverend Dr. Alexander Lucie-Smith to be on with us today to help us better understand what is going on here. And he joins us now. Good morning to you, Father. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me. Well, where should we begin with this grooming scandal, rape scandal that's been roiling Great Britain for actually 30 years? It's not a new thing. It's been going on since the turn of the century. On the one hand, it's a very simple thing. And on the other hand, it becomes impossibly complicated. So if I could just go to the very simple thing right at the beginning, it's beyond doubt that in numerous British towns, including Oxford, which is a very prosperous town, but also including Rochdale and Rotherham, which are probably two of the poorest towns in Britain, gangs of Muslim men were systematically exploiting, grooming, raping young girls. These girls were very young. They were 13, 14, 15. And these girls obviously complained about their treatment to the various authorities, and the various authorities, by and large, fobbed them off. Either they said the girls were not credible witnesses, or else they said the girls were teenage prostitutes and they were doing this of their own free will.
Oh, my.
They based this on the very loose argument that the girls were receiving favors from their tormentors, such as free taxi rides and free kebabs and food and so on. Therefore, they were prostitutes. Also, they said, and this is the most shocking thing, they said, oh no, we can't investigate this because it will endanger racial harmony. We'll be seen as racist because the people who've been accused are almost exclusively Pakistani Muslims. Now, then what happened was that this scandal gradually blew up, and it happened in various towns, and a lot of people came forward who were what we call in England whistleblowers. Now, some of these were social workers and health workers to whom the girls went, because many of these girls had horrific physical injuries. So there was a lady called Sarah Rowbottom, and there was another lady called Jane Senior, who were social workers and health workers, who blew the whistle on this. Then it went a level higher, and several MPs took it up One who's now retired was a lady called Anne Cryer. Another was a lady called Sarah Champion. She was the MP for one of these towns. Also, a lady called Lucy Allen. These were three female MPs who represented these girls, after all, or represented their parents. Now, Anne Cryer was a Labour MP, not a right-wing nutcase by any stretch of the imagination. She was told to shut up. She was told she was racist. Sarah Champion was told to shut up, and she was told she was racist, and she was sacked from her front bench position in the Labour opposition. Lucy Allen was told to shut up, that she was being racist, and that it would not help her career. She's subsequently no longer in Parliament because she was voted out. Now, one of the key developments in this scandal is that in 2017, a television programme came out made by the BBC, which was called Three Girls, which was about the scandal, I think, in Rochdale or Rotherham. And it starred a very famous actress playing the part of Sarah Rowbottom, the heroic social worker, medical worker who brought all this to public attention. But it had already come to public attention by that stage. Because I remember about 20 years ago, maybe, seeing a play in the theatre about Anne Cryer. Now, it's come to public attention again and again and again, but at the same time, there's been very, very strong pushback from people saying, no, you can't talk about this. This is demonizing members of the Islamic and Pakistani community. And of course, don't you realize that most child sexual abuse takes place by white men are the most guilty people of child sexual abuse? Now, so we've got something very simple here, child sexual abuse on a massive scale by Pakistani Muslim men, and going on for decades, and probably lots of cases where we don't know it's still going on because these criminals are not going to advertise their activities, probably going on in many other places. Then we've got the pushback. You're racist. We can't do this because multiculturalism will be endangered. Or else we've got another pushback saying, what about all the white men who are committing child sexual abuse? And we've got another pushback saying, these girls are making it up. We've still got people saying, these girls are making it up. So it's now what's changed recently is Elon Musk has taken it up. But it's actually something that has been going on since about 1998. The other thing is this, and this is where it gets much more complicated, is people were arrested, people were put on trial, and they were sentenced. These men from Rochdale and Telford and other places, they got rather light sentences, it has to be said, 4 years, things like that. They also got, many of them had dual nationality, and they should have been deported. But no, they were given legal aid by the state to fight deportation, and they had very lengthy cases, and I think most of them have not been deported. They're still here. One of the things that's really awful is that there are young women now who were raped, gang raped as girls, and who occasionally do something perfectly innocent, like go to the supermarket, and they see at the end of a supermarket aisle their tormentor, who is still living in the same town, who is now free. He might have gone down for 5 years into prison, or he might have done 2.5 years in prison, because you get half off for good behavior, and he's walking around. And these girls are horrified and tormented all over again by that experience. What's happened is, we have forgotten the victims in this. The victims are the most important people. And the other thing is, then we've got this thing about the public inquiry. Now, this is what Elon Musk picked up. The government minister in charge of this sort of thing, she said in Oldham, where there'd been a rape gang scandal, oh no, we must have a local inquiry, not a national inquiry. Now, it's been pointed out that the Labour Party never found an inquiry it didn't love, but suddenly they've changed their tune. They don't want an inquiry. Now, the reason for this is, of course, because the Labour Party is facing a very strong challenge electorally from Islamist MPs. 4 Islamist MPs were elected on the Gaza ticket. They literally said, this is for Gaza. And several leading members of the Labour Party, including the lady who refused to have the public inquiry, Jess Phillips, just made it back into Parliament despite a very strong challenge from Muslim candidates. So the Labour Party is terrified of stirring up anti-Muslim, a bad feeling amongst the Muslims. Now, the Muslim MPs, not one of them has spoken about this in Parliament, which I find quite extraordinary. Now, and the other thing is, nobody wants to talk about the cultural and religious aspects of this. The cultural and the religious aspects are very clear. First of all, in Britain, we have an age of consent. It's 16. If somebody has sexual intercourse or anything with a girl under the age of 16, that is statutory rape and it is a crime. And if you're caught, you go to jail. That at least is how most of us think it should be. That's how most of us think it is. Turns out not so much, not as much as we thought. Now, the terrible thing was that the police in places like Rotherham and Rochdale were saying, oh, these girls, they're prostitutes. They're 13 years old. They're having sex with men. That's normal. They can't complain. So we've compromised on the age of consent thing. No, if you're having sex before the age of 16, that is wrong and it has to stop. End of. But of course, there have been quite a few chippings away at that already. The other thing is, in the culture of the perpetrators, does the age of consent exist? And in their minds, does the age of consent exist? Does the age of consent exist in Sharia law? And as far as I can tell, no, it doesn't seem to. The other thing is the perpetrators referred to the girls as, forgive me for saying this, I'm not sure if it's very rude in America, white slags and infidel whores. And there was another phrase they used, which I can't repeat on radio. And of course, the people who were supposed to be protecting these girls, they didn't use those terms, but they essentially had the same low opinion of these girls. They were white, they were working class, maybe they were poorly educated and poorly presented, and they didn't see them as somehow or another worth protecting. Now we go on to a much bigger picture, and that's this. Who are the most downtrodden people in Britain? The most downtrodden people in Britain are not our Asian brothers and sisters or our black brothers and sisters. The people who do worst in school are, of course, white boys. White girls do a bit better. So the most downtrodden people in Britain are the white working class, the ones who've fallen behind. And that, of course, is something nobody wants to talk about.
Well, one of the stories, the one out of the BBC, it was a former investigator, and he's saying this is definitely still happening in the UK. There are definitely still Pakistani rape gangs going on, and there are victims today. But he also quotes, or the article quotes out of the BBC, one of the victims from times past, and she says she doesn't want a national inquiry. She says that's a waste of time. What we want is action, not just thinking about it, talking about it, looking into it. We want something to be done by this. Do you think that's fair?
Yes, I do. I do actually take the view that a national inquiry would be a waste of time and it would cost a huge amount of money. And the other thing is it would go on a very long time and be an excuse for inaction. And also there are too many people who want to defend their reputations and say it would really be about their reputations and not about the victims. The other thing is this, though, the real, and yet another problem associated with this is we have governments who can't govern. We have people who say we need to do something about this, but who can't deliver. Why can't we take action? Why are all our governments so extraordinarily paralyzed when it comes to actually governing the country? Because we've got enough laws, for goodness sake.
Yeah, to be sure. Now, before the break, you started to mention sort of the demographics, the worst performers in school are white males, that kind of thing. It made me wonder, like, where are the dads in this story? These little girls being raped and molested, are they fatherless homes?
Not necessarily. Some of these girls who were raped were actually in care. Now, that's an English phrase. I don't know if you know what it means. It means when the local government comes and takes the child off the parents because the child's at risk. of abuse or very disadvantaged, not being properly looked after, and therefore the person is put with adoptive parents. So some of these children were from very problematic families, but that doesn't mean to say, of course, they should be denied justice.
Right, of course.
Some were actually from standard families, and of course the parents got very angry, and in one case the father was actually arrested for protesting about his daughter's rape.
I have to imagine I'd probably be in that category if I'm being honest. This would be a 2-for-1 special for the devil, I imagine. You know, destroying society, destroying souls. He corrupts families, he corrupts the homes, and then he, you know, he like sort of fans that flame where we're seeing these Pakistani gangs raping and molesting these vulnerable children. It just seems disgusting to me, to say the least. Where has the church stood on this issue over the years in the UK?
I haven't heard any commentary from the church.
Wow.
I don't think in the places where this took place, I haven't come across a single priest whose commentary has been picked up by the national press, who had feet on the ground and who was in the middle of it and so on. That's not to say that the priests at a local level were not doing what they should be doing. It's quite possible that nobody was interested in what they had to say, so it did not get reported. Don't forget, people like Anne Cryer, who was a very respected MP. I mean, she was told to shut up. And so if you can tell Anne Cryer to shut up, you can tell people further down the food chain to shut up as well. And I think that's what must have happened. Don't rock the boat. You don't want to create race riots, for example, would have been one of the things they would have said. You don't want to demonize the Islamic and Pakistani communities.
What was that our Lord said about harming one of the least one of mine? Yeah. It comes to mind right now, and it just seems like, have we forgotten that we're all going to die someday and have to stand before the Lord in judgment? And golly gee whiz, if we knew and didn't say anything, I mean, think about even just the scandal within Holy Mother Church over the past several decades, you know, going back to 2002 with former Cardinal Theodore McCarrick leading the USCCB here in the United States, giving us the plan to fix all this when he was the biggest perpetrator all along. I mean, in Boston, and now it's just it's like a wildfire. It spread so far and so fast. And how many people, we were told, knew about McCarrick's scandal and said and did nothing? I mean, shame on us. And here we are seeing this now in secular society too. We're going to have to give an account, Father, for this. So we need to speak up. We need to do something about this. The bishops in England should take a strong stand, not because they want to create race riots, but because error shouldn't have its day in court. Don't you agree?
I agree completely. I mean, I think number one thing that the church needs to point out to everybody, and particularly to ourselves, is that our number one duty is fidelity to the truth. If something's happening, we say, this is what it is, this is happening. We don't try and massage it or spin it in some way. And the most ridiculous thing, of course, is to say, oh, well, most child sexual abuse is carried out by white men. Yes, that's because there are more white men than Pakistani men and Muslim men in Britain. But that is actually irrelevant. We've got to look at what's standing in front of us and concentrate on that rather than try and deflect. And what we've had in Britain is 30 years of deflection, which is a disgrace, absolute disgrace. And it shows that our government is unable to grasp nettles, unable to take difficult decisions, unable to face difficult truths.
One of the things we're seeing is this trend to move towards the right. We're seeing it across the West in general. Germany, I reported a story earlier. Germany is moving more right. We're seeing it in France and other countries as well, Ireland. But my concern is it's that pendulum that swings. If it swings without the compass, without the lens of Jesus Christ and his one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church, then I fear that it swings too far and it makes mistakes. You fall off the other side of the ship instead. Will we see that in the UK?
Well, the political situation in the UK, because we have a first past post electoral system, is that the Labour Party won an absolute landslide with 1/3 of the votes. People didn't vote for the Labour Party with great enthusiasm, but the opposition to the Labour Party was split in a variety of ways. The Reform Party, under the leadership of Farage, is certainly in the ascendant right now. the Conservative Party has a job to try and maintain its leadership of the right against the insurgent candidacy of Farage. The thing about Farage is that he's not necessarily a very right-wing person in some respects. In many ways, he's an iconoclast and he's a liberal. And in economics, we're not quite sure where he's coming from. But the truth of the matter is there's a huge amount of anger out there because we've got a Labour Party that doesn't look after working people. We've got a Conservative Party that has conserved absolutely nothing. And we've got a Liberal Party, which is anything but liberal and democratic as it claims to be. It's a very authoritarian party in its liberalism. So we've got really big problems at the heart of our government, as do every other European nation. In France, the left has collapsed, and in Germany, things are collapsing as well. The traditional parties are shrinking.
Wow. Did you like that video? It's okay. You can admit it. It's perfectly fine. Hey, we cover the big stories of our day, from inside the church to outside the church to all points in between, and we do it from a Catholic perspective. It's called A Catholic Take. It's a radio program Monday through Friday. We live stream it right here on this channel, by the way, so make sure to subscribe, like, and share. We would be very grateful to you. And don't forget, you're going to want to watch this video right here because you don't want to miss anything.